From the beginning, STS-49 would stand out as an extraordinary mission. As Endeavour rolled onto the tarmac in Palmdale, California on April 25, 1991, it set the stage for America's 47th Space Shuttle mission. Endeavour was a milestone, bringing the shuttle fleet back to full strength after the loss of the Space Shuttle Challenger, signifying a new level of confidence and ambition for the American space program. But the maiden voyage of Endeavour would prove to be not only a test of the space transportation system, but a test of the entire space flight program. After more than a year of intensive training, the crew of Endeavour was ready to face the complex inaugural voyage ahead. Navy Captain Dan Brandenstein commanded the crew of 7, while Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Chilton served as pilot. The piloting skills of both men would be crucial to the success of the mission. The remaining members of the crew, mission specialists Richard Heeb, Dr. Catherine Thornton, Coast Guard Commander Bruce Melnick, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Tom Akers, and Navy Commander Pierre Thuot shared in the responsibility of achieving the mission objectives. The primary objective, the retrieval, repair, and reboost of the International Telecommunications Satellite, or Intelsat 6 F3. A wiring error on the unmanned commercial booster rocket marooned the satellite in a useless low orbit after its launch in 1990. Intelsat commissioned NASA to rescue the stranded satellite. Though this was not NASA's first satellite rescue, it would be one of the most challenging for the Space Shuttle program. Endeavour and her crew would engage in the first attachment of a solid rocket motor in orbit, and the first attempt to perform 3 consecutive spacewalks. Another objective of the flight would be the assembly of station by EVA methods experiment, or ASEM. The mission specialist teams of Akers, Thornton, Thuot, and Heeb would perform EVAs, or spacewalks, to evaluate equipment and techniques for the construction of Space Station Freedom. In the payload bay, the astronauts would build a truss structure and evaluate EVA operations to be used for space station assembly. To achieve these objectives, the crew of Endeavour underwent months of rigorous training at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. At the Precision Air Bearing Facility, a mock-up of Intelsat 6 was used to assess how the satellite would respond in space and to demonstrate the capabilities of the unique capture bar.
Okay, one more time at half. Why don't you guys put a little wobble in it, if you can.
Thuot would use the capture bar to catch the satellite and stop its rotation. The bar included a grapple fixture for the robot arm to grab the satellite and place it on top of the solid rocket motor.
Okay, that's better.
Thuot and Heeb continued their training in the Weightless Environment Training Facility. This training focused on the task of attaching the satellite to the solid rocket motor and preparing it for its launch from the shuttle cargo bay. It would pay off handsomely in space. The complex dynamics and interactions of satellite, shuttle, robot arm, and astronaut were difficult, if not impossible, to recreate on the ground, and proved to be the most serious challenge facing the satellite rescue mission. May 7th, 1992, a relaxed and confident Endeavour crew heads for the launch pad. Weather problems persisted throughout the day, but the rainy skies couldn't dampen the spirits of the 7-member crew.
Unlock your visors and initiate O2 flow. Good luck on the maiden voyage of the newest shuttle Endeavour.
T-minus 10. We have a go for engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the maiden voyage of Endeavour on a satellite rescue mission.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
SRB separation confirmed.
Following a flawless liftoff and ascent, Endeavour settled into orbit. Over the next 2 days, Endeavour and the stranded satellite circled the Earth while performing a series of crucial maneuvers as a prelude to the rendezvous. The success of this unique mission would require an unprecedented level of coordination between the Intelsat control facility in Washington, D.C. and Mission Control in Houston. An intricate dance ensued as the flight crew gradually raised Endeavour's altitude and Intelsat controllers lowered their spacecraft.
This is a 45-second burn of the twin orbital maneuvering system engines that produce about 6,000 pounds of thrust, raising Endeavour's low-ends orbit from 146 to 187 nautical miles, getting it closer to a more circular orbit as it continues its chase to catch up with the Intelsat spacecraft.
As the countdown to the first spacewalk proceeded, crew members began the checkout of the robot arm and spacesuits.
In Houston, as you gathered, we've completed equipment prep, and as you can see, it's just as crowded as we expected it to be.
And we copy, Pierre. Thanks.
On Sunday, the 4th day into Endeavour's mission, Thuot and Heeb stepped into the payload bay to begin the first rescue attempt. While Thuot grappled the satellite, Heeb, from his unique vantage point in the payload bay, served as an extra pair of eyes for the cockpit. Melnick operated the robot arm from inside the orbiter.
Okay, you ready to go for it? Okay, go for it. Hey, Pierre, here we go.
Unfortunately, the cards were stacked against the crew this day.
In a little bit, Bruce. Coming in. Oops, I missed it. Hang on. Okay, have to catch it next time. Okay, we got a rate on it now.
The capture attempts caused the 4.5-ton satellite to wobble so much it became impossible for Thuot to attach the capture bar. Endeavour was forced to back away to avoid a collision with the satellite.
Verify the shower cap pedals that we flipped
Endeavour
up
Dan,
are secured.
Rendezvous and Fidos are working on
Okay.
a best maneuver for you to back out here so we can stabilize for about 6-8 hours. We'll try to come in again tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds good. We got a slight opening rate, and we're comfortable right here.
Okay, sounds good. We'll have some words for you shortly.
Rotation rate on the arm. This was a full pitch deflection trying to...
After analyzing the downlink footage from Endeavour's cameras, the crew held a conference with Mission Control to discuss conditions contributing to the unsuccessful attempt. Prime factors included the satellite's unexpected sensitivity to touch, the unanticipated movement affecting Thuot's positioning on the robot arm, and reduced visibility on the dark side of the Earth. The next step was clear. A second attempt would be made on Monday.
Probably the most important question first, and that's where was the...
Engineers on Earth struggled throughout the day and into the night to come up with a better way of capturing the satellite. Monday, May 11th. Thuot and Heeb stepped from the airlock into the payload bay. While Mission Control had brainstormed for the second EVA, the crew had come up with a few suggestions of their own. They would attempt the capture in maximum sunlight to give Thuot the best view. Time would be allowed for a bump test, bumping the capture bar against the left side of the cargo bay to familiarize Thuot with the dynamics. This would also determine how the bar would respond when striking the satellite in a weightless environment. Perhaps most importantly, Brandon Stein would have to keep Endeavour in position beneath Intelsat for as long as it took Thuot to get into optimum position.
Awaiting good sun angles now to begin maneuvering Pierre Thuot on the end of the robot arm into the tail end of the satellite.
Yet, despite the planning and coordination between ground and space, this second attempt also failed.
I do believe. On. Good. Well, nice. Oh, no. Back away.
Uh-oh.
Surely you had it.
During the 5.5-hour spacewalk, Thuot made 5 attempts to attach the capture bar to the satellite.
Yeah, and you were right in there.
Yeah.
On the left beam end, I could see clearly.
That was right. That was when I was looking at it. I can't see the left one because it's hidden by the bar, but
Yeah, I saw the left one.
it almost looked like you stopped the rotation. I think you did some. You stopped the rotation. It wasn't enough to fire the latches.
Yes, that's true.
Problems arose when the trigger release on the grapple bar failed to snap into place due to the delicate equilibrium of the orbiting satellite.
So let's go in. Put the right thumb and down. Go in. Hold it right there. Dang it. Why it's not grabbing? I didn't get it. That might be all of it today.
The situation was becoming increasingly frustrating. After the second attempt, Thuot noted a wide margin of difference between performing the capture in NASA's microgravity simulators and actually trying it in space. Because of Brandon Stein's piloting skills and frugal use of fuel on the second attempt, enough fuel remained for one more rendezvous.
And Dan, we've been looking at the prop. Just want to tell you that your formation flying there has been outstanding. We've had practically no forward prop usage at all. Fine job you're doing.
A third attempt was immediately approved, but a replanning of strategy was clearly necessary.
All right, Endeavour Houston, with kind of the big pictures, we're planning on an 8-hour sleep period. No EVA for tomorrow. We're going to rendezvous with Intelsat on day 7.
These guys grab it, stabilize it, de-spin.
Human intelligence was Endeavour's strongest ally, and ingenuity and adaptability were crucial to success. The hours that followed were a maze of brainstorming sessions and hands-on tests. For veterans of the space program, the level of activity was reminiscent of the early days of Gemini and Apollo. The Tiger team, a group of troubleshooting specialists, discussed the options available.
But we got 1 day left, 1 attempt left. Where do you want to put all your eggs?
Among the ideas suggested, a revised 2-man spacewalk to capture and repair the satellite. Engineers also discussed using the orbiter's robot arm to maneuver a crew member to the top of the satellite and capture it from there. Meanwhile, the crew came up with a simple yet revolutionary plan, a record-setting 3-man spacewalk, a first in the history of the space program. The crew downlinked a sketch photographed on the electronic still camera developed by Johnson Space Center to demonstrate their plan to Mission Control. 3 astronauts, Thuot, Heeb, and Akers, would attempt to capture the satellite by hand.
You get the capture bar. regardless of the orientation, our big thing right now is this may not be clean. You know, this is not, I mean, it doesn't even have to be pretty. We just have to get this thing, but it has to be safe.
Safety was a primary concern. Piloting had to be exact to ensure there would be no risk of a collision between the satellite and the orbiter. Every possible danger was assessed.
So the 3 crew members will be putting on their suits and climbing into the airlock along with all of their tools and equipment that will be necessary for tomorrow's spacewalk attempt to capture the Intelsat spacecraft.
In addition, there was some concern as to whether the 3 astronauts could fit into the airlock. So, before the plan was approved, it was tested in the orbiter and on the ground. Dozens of engineers, astronauts, and other specialists debated and tested the plan by using mock-ups of Intelsat in the underwater tank with astronauts Story Musgrave, Rich Clifford, and Jim Voss. Similar mock-up demonstrations were conducted on the air-bearing table.
Okay, we just came out of the mission management meeting and presented the plan, and I think we've got something that is going to pull together here.
The go-ahead was given Tuesday night. The third and final attempt would be made the following day.
Covered as many of the bases as we could today.
Good evening, friends. A high drama is being played out in space right now.
A risky rescue attempt, an unprecedented mission.
While the astronauts worked 225 miles above the Earth, Americans kept an ear to their radios and an eye on their televisions for the latest news.
About 4 minutes ago, the crew of Endeavour.
Good evening. The drama in
and many
space
were eagerly offering their own suggestions on how to capture the stranded satellite. Velcro, fishing hooks, and lassos were some of the methods suggested.
The riskiest.
Wednesday, May 13th, Brandon Stein and Chilton began maneuvering the orbiter closer to the satellite. 12 miles behind the satellite, as they approached the most critical burn of the rendezvous, they discovered a previously unencountered glitch in Endeavour's computers. At the same time, a thunderstorm over a ground communications site caused the crew to lose contact with mission control. The computer problem on board Endeavour meant Brandon Stein and Chilton would not be able to compute the final critical rendezvous burns. Ground control studied the problem with only minutes to decide to continue the rendezvous or delay for one orbit. Another option was to skip today's attempt and study the problem for another day.
I'm going to do. If we can get some confidence back in the solutions, what I'm looking for is something that'll bail me out for loss of comp. Otherwise, I'm going to burn ground.
Or should they try it without the onboard computer and attempt a ground-controlled approach to the satellite? This type of approach meant that data normally collected by the shuttle's computer would need to be calculated on the ground and relayed up to the crew. With only 45 seconds until the burn, Endeavour regained communications with Houston. The decision was to delay. Heeb, Thuot, and Akers were already in the airlock and waited another hour and a half in their cramped quarters. Precious fuel had been used to execute the delay maneuver. Now, more than ever, Brandon Stein must fly a perfect final approach. He accomplishes this with fuel to spare. An anxious nation held its breath as Thuot, Heeb, and Akers left the airlock.
Out in the payload bay, 3 spacewalking astronauts are preparing to install the bottom plane of the assembly of station by EVA Methods hardware.
After building a bridge structure across the payload bay using struts from the space station test and portable foot restraints, the trio positioned themselves for the capture. Heeb on the edge of the payload bay, and Akers on the strut spanning the payload bay. Thuot, on the robot arm, adjusted his movements in coordination with the satellite. Meanwhile, Brandon Stein positioned the crew at eye level with the underside of the satellite. In this attempt, every detail had to be exact.
With the coating, it may just come right back to Tom. Over.
It may. I guess all we can do is kind of sit here and wait for the right opportunity. And
haven't got anything else on my dance card. Over.
Yeah, real easy, guys. Real easy.
Don't bring us any closer, Dan.
Okay, I'm stopping it.
I'm afraid it's going to rise out of my reach, but we'll see. Over.
And, as the saying goes, the third time was a charm.
I can get it.
Can you get yours, Tom?
I can get mine.
Okay. Wait. Let's do it.
Got it. All got a good grip?
Yes, sir.
Houston, I think we got a satellite.
Yeah, we're watching down here. We got a lot of smiles down here, Dan.
It ain't over yet.
Indeed, it wasn't over yet. But with the most difficult part of the mission behind them, things could now proceed as planned. After rotating the massive satellite, Thuot and Heeb attached the capture bar. Once in place, Melnick maneuvered Thuot under the satellite to tighten the bar. To do this, Melnick had to move the robot arm, with Thuot still attached, extremely close to the orbiter and truss structure. This unexpected task was not part of the pre-mission training. Once Melnick used the robot arm to lower the satellite into the cargo bay, a new booster rocket was secured. When it was all over, another record had been set for the longest spacewalk in the history of the space program, 8 hours and 29 minutes. With the crew safely inside the airlock again, the satellite was ready for deployment.
There's a delay, don't worry.
Yeah.
There's a delay.
There's a delay?
Yeah.
How much?
However, the onboard wiring configurations on the new orbiter were different than anticipated by the ground staff, so some minor readjustments were required by ground support.
Primary deploy A-arm on, talkback gray. Stand by for fire. 3, 2, 1, fire. Astonished.
Tell you, that old boy didn't want to go, did he?
After 2 attempts to deploy, ground controllers sorted out the wiring change, communicated the correct switch positions to the orbiter, and Intelsat 6 was on its way to its intended orbit of 22,300 miles. But Endeavour's work was yet to be completed. Mission managers decided to extend the mission an extra day, allowing for a 4th spacewalk on Thursday to practice the space station assembly techniques. The crew had originally planned 2 days for these spacewalks. But since the space station test structure had been partially built for the satellite rescue attempt, they were able to incorporate most of the activities of 2 days into 1.
And just so you know, the game plan for the day, it's another day, another EVA.
That's the type of game plan we like.
On Thursday, the attention of the crew and the nation was again on the payload bay. With the 4th and final EVA of Tom Akers and Kathy Thornton, the crew of Endeavour set the record for the most spacewalks in NASA's history. The pair spent 7 hours and 45 minutes demonstrating techniques to be used during space station construction and maintenance. However, this spacewalk was not without its complications. When the crew members used foot restraints to control their body positioning, the time required to accomplish a task in space was very close to the time required in the water tank. But free-floating exercises proved much more difficult and time-consuming. Mission planners will use the lessons learned during the 4 spacewalks to increase the efficiency, training, and techniques to be used in the assembly of Space Station Freedom.
As the son of a sailor, I went out on the sea for adventure, expanding the view of the captain and crew like a man.
Endeavour Houston, good morning. The SDS-49 trainers send Dan and his spacefaring crew their best for making the maiden voyage of Endeavour a spectacular success. They wish you well as you start preparing to come home to port.
Well, good morning, Houston, and thank our training team of those fine words. We couldn't have done it without them getting us squared away before we left.
Endeavour and its crew sailed into the 9th day of the mission, preparing the orbiter systems for the trip home the next day. It was a day for reflection as the crew held a news conference from the orbiter.
We were speculating how many people were involved. We knew it was a lot, but we didn't have a clue how many it was. And they did a fantastic job. There was, we had some ideas, they had some ideas, we shared them. They had a lot of data we didn't, and went off and worked it and came up and fine-tuned some of our ideas with theirs, and you saw the end result. It just proves that NASA has a great team and can really do the job when the chips are down.
With the mission objectives behind them, the crew prepared the orbiter for re-entry.
Endeavour Houston, you have a go for the deorbit burn.
All right, Houston, go for deorbit burn.
But before putting this mission in the books, Endeavour had one more test. After touchdown at Edwards Air Force Base in California, a drag chute was deployed from the back of the orbiter. Engineers designed the chute to improve braking and steering control during landings. Long after Endeavour has been rolled off the runway in preparation for another mission, planners and engineers will use the information and knowledge gained on this flight to improve future flights. In hindsight, most agree the reasons for mission success were clear. Despite the problems often associated with a maiden voyage, Endeavour performed flawlessly.
We felt pretty good about the mission. It had been real interesting and challenging, and we were real happy with the way Endeavour performed. It performed like a real champ, which is phenomenal for the first flight of a new vehicle.
Perhaps the simplest explanation for this mission's success is the team effort, the ability to adapt and learn in the face of adversity, demonstrated by both the crew and ground staff. Proof that people are a vital link in the American space program, now and into the 21st century.